Good evening, Flosstube. Today is Wednesday, July 20th, 2016. It's 8 o'clock and coming to you, well, it won't be live by the time it posts, but as I am recording this live from Sunderland, Massachusetts, I thought that for my second Flosstube video, I would show you my finished objects for the year so far and my two most prominent whips that I hope to have done by the end of the year. I'm thinking that my video schedule from here on out will be every other week. I have this strange work schedule where if I can compress 10 days worth of work into 9.5, I get that other half day off. I could have done, if I could compress 5 days of work into 4.5, I could have had a half day off every week on a rotating schedule, but that didn't work for me because I would have gotten way too far behind, and I just didn't think it was fair to my attorney to do that. So every other week I do have a half day, and that just seems to me like that'll be a good schedule for sharing videos, because that way I can have 2 weeks worth of progress to share, and hopefully it will motivate me to make a lot of headway on the projects I want to finish, and possibly get some other things done that I can share with you. So right now as it stands, I have 3 out of the 4 finished objects that I've done this year so far. One of them is in Virginia, and I don't have a decent picture that's going to show up on the webcam. I do have a picture, but it's not a very good one. My outdoor photography skills are far superior to my indoor ones, and even if it was a good picture, I doubt it would show up on my webcam. So I will post a link in the description to a quick blog post where I'll share the picture and talk about it. But it was a project that I did for my niece for good luck at nationals in her dance competition. And, well, hey, she placed second in her age group, and in the overall group for solo tappers, she was 7th out of about between 50 and 60. So behold the power of cross stitch. Of course, the joke is now, well, every year she goes to nationals, you have to cross stitch or something, but I've actually already got a project plan that I will probably start next February or March, like I did with that particular pattern, so that I can bring her more good luck. And I'll tell you more about that in the blog post, so I'll link that below. And that was actually the second finished object I had for the year. The first one was this one that I did in January, and it's the Sioux Whine a Bit You'll Feel Better. You see how close I can get that. This one was one that I did just when I needed a break from other projects. My husband was out of town for a couple of days, and the thing I love about these little Sioux post stitches projects is that they're meant to be done in a couple days. They're small, not a whole lot of color changes. They all have a cute little charm. This one has a little water bottle, yeah, right, wine bottle charm on it that I think is really adorable, and I stitched it in about 2.5 days. I did it on a piece of scrap linen that I had that, I don't know, it was just in my stash, so I stitched it on there. And when I stitched it, I was just basically trying to occupy my time and do something a little different. And I didn't really have a plan for who it was going to go to. And it sat in my crafting chair for about 4 or 5 months before I thought, well, you know what? It's my sister's 40th birthday this September. She doesn't have anything that I've made that I've had framed for her. So there you go. Nice 40th birthday present. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going to take it to my framers and get it framed and send it to her in time for her birthday. So I love it when you don't have a plan, but then it turns into a plan, and it's all good. So that was actually the first one that I did, the Sioux post-stitch pattern. It's not the first post-stitch project I've done of hers. The first one I did was the pirate one of The Beatings Will Continue Until Morale Improves. I actually stitched that last summer and got that framed this past winter, and it is in my office. It's in my cube at work. Sorry, not product placement, but if you do want an alternative to soda, San Pellegrino's a good one. But You know, it hasn't gotten me in trouble yet. It may not be the most politically correct thing to say, but I guarantee you pretty much everybody else in my office feels the same way. So even the managers probably. So that one's at work. And then this post stitch I just did, and I'm going to give it to my sister. I'm working on a third post stitch, which is a little quilt that says so many quilts, so little time. And that's my lunch break project that I'm just kind of, whenever I feel like it, during the week, I'll stitch on it on my lunch break. And I'm making that actually for a friend of mine who's in the quilting group at our church. And it's cute. It's got a little scissors charm on it. And I actually have found that I like stitching quilt blocks. I wouldn't want to try to quilt. That would not end well. But I like stitching quilt blocks, so eventually I'll have that one to share with you. But the Whine a Bit, You'll Feel Better was my first finish. And then the second finish I had was the Dancers. And that one's already in Virginia. And I have it on good authority that my niece was very surprised and loved it. And so then in June, I had decided I wanted to try to do a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs pattern for my minister because she loves the Seven Dwarfs. She's got a collection of all seven dwarfs, the plush Disney version dwarfs. She's got all seven of them. She keeps them in the church. And so I went to the Clouds Factory site because I thought, well, if anybody's going to have Snow White, it's going to be Clouds Factory. And I was right. But the thing is that I tried to just put one pattern in the cart, but somehow I ended up with 5 others following at home. I downloaded the Star Wars Force Awakens, the Russian Icons, A Christmas Story, Magnum PI, and the X-Files. So yeah, I went in for Vertically Challenged Men, and I came out with a leg lamp, Sith Lords, Balalaikas and Russian Dancers, and sci-fi TV shows, and Tom Selleck's eyebrows. It's funny how these things happen. I can't explain it. So the first Clouds Factory pattern I did was the Magnum one. And I had initially thought I was going to do this one for my mother-in-law because she was very much in love with Tom Selleck back in the day, and I think she even watches Blue Bloods because he's on it. She's watched like everything he's done, even the not so good stuff. But she doesn't want anything more for her walls. And in fact, at one point she was talking about getting rid of some photographs and things, and we had to beg her, no, please don't do that. That's part of our legacy. And she was like, okay, but I don't want anything else to put up. So out of respect for that, I decided I was going to make this for my husband, because he used to watch Magnum with her, and he loves the show too. And in fact, when we find those nostalgic TV channels, sometimes he'll watch Magnum, and I started watching it with him. I mean, I used to watch Magnum when I was younger, but not to the point like he did where he never missed an episode. And the only thing I added to it was, I don't know how well it shows up on my webcam, but I put in Magnum's catchphrase, which was, I know what you're thinking and you're right. He had to say that every episode. That was his catchphrase. And I think he really turned out cute. I love how much that looks like Tom Selleck. And it was funny because I showed my husband and he thought it turned out great. It only took a couple of days to stitch it. And he was like, but you know what, honey? That kind of reminds me of a Funko Pop. That's kind of cool. And it had not even occurred to me to think of that, but they kind of do look like Funko Pops. But this one was fun. And I just stitched it on a scrap piece of 14 count Haida that I had. So then after that one, which was my third finish of the year so far, of course I had to do the X-Files for myself. Now, when I was in college, the X-Files had been on, I can't remember, I think it either premiered my freshman year in college or it had been on a year already. I think it came out the year that I was, the year I was a freshman in college, and I found it, and I absolutely loved that show for the first 5 seasons. I didn't like it when it got into the government conspiracy and the aliens were here and the government was covering it up and all that stuff about Mulder's sister being abducted, but she wasn't really. I don't know. After a while, I fell out of favor with it, but when it was the Twilight Zone-ish kind of Monster of the Week thing, I loved it. So I had to do the X-Files for myself. So I'm going to eventually get those 2 framed for our apartment. So then we will have a whopping total of 4 things that I've stitched in my lifetime that I've kept for myself in the apartment. So those are the finished objects. The 2 main works in progress that I have right now that I'm really trying to focus on finishing are one for the wedding that I mentioned in the first video that was last week. And I haven't gotten a whole lot done on the bride, but this was a pattern that I found online. I had originally ordered a pattern from Nordic Needle that was a black work. It was a bell, and it had all kinds of bridal words and cross stitch in it. And I started doing it last Christmas at my in-laws, and when I pulled it back out, I just looked at it and I thought, this is not me. I don't like this. And I'm not sure why I didn't, but it just was not me. So at the point that I pulled it back out to work on it, it was too late to get anything done in time for the wedding. But I figured I'll send it to them on their 2nd or 3rd month anniversary. Well, probably, yeah, their 2nd month anniversary would be September, so I can probably have it done by then, if not early October, depending on when I can get it finished. And I went online and put in free wedding cross-stitch patterns. And the search took me to this beautiful French website that, if I remember my French correctly, is not currently active, but the person who ran the website designed free cross-stitch patterns that she posted on the site, and this one was one of them. I don't have a picture because it was just a PDF that I downloaded, but I will include a link to the actual pattern on the site so that you can see it. It's called Mariée, which means married couple, and it's going to be very beautiful when I get done with it. I finished the groom, and as you can see, it's like a silhouette type cross stitch. The groom is finished. The bride's dress, please ignore my needle minder there, but that's the first needle minder I ever bought from Nordic Needle, little acorn. The dress is going to come down and swoop around beneath the groom in like a big train, you know, swooping down. Now, the pattern called for that same pink that I used in my niece's, which I wouldn't have done anyway. But the reason I'm doing the red and blue is, as I mentioned in the previous video, she married a former Marine, and they had a red, white, and blue themed wedding. The bride's mother was in red, and the groom's mother was in blue, and the bridesmaids wore dark red, and the groomsmen wore blue, you know, blue dress shirts and all. So, so I wanted to do it in the red, white, and blue. And originally I was going to stitch this on 32 count heroic from Picture This Plus, but when I decided that I was going to do it on the white, I think it's popping so much better now on the white. And sadly, after what just happened in Paris, when I stitch on this now, I think of the tricolor. I think of the French flag. Not only because it was designed by a French woman, but just because, you know, I stitch when I have the TV on, and at one point I was stitching on this over the weekend when they were talking about the terror attack. And of course, the thing that got me the terror attack was Sunday, right? And I just was thinking, there we were having a blast Saturday at this wedding, and it was all about love and family, and then something terrible like that had to happen. So it kind of brought me down a little bit when I looked at this on Sunday when I was working on it, because it was like, well, that's the French flag, right? But I'm doing it for Dan and Diane. I love them dearly. And I do plan to have this done. It shouldn't take that long. I mean, with it only being the one color for each figure, you know, it's just a matter of sitting down and actually doing it. Half the time, that's my problem with cross stitch, is that I know that I have projects like this one that I want to finish, and I should put those first. But it kind of reminds me of the way I used to be when I took piano lessons. Excuse me again. My problem with my piano lessons was I just wanted to play. I didn't want to practice. And that's probably something horrible to admit, but like practicing your scales and practicing, my piano teacher, especially when I was starting out, wanted us to practice the left hand part 5 times, practice the right hand part 5 times, and then put the hands together and practice that 5 times. But I didn't like the structure because basically I just wanted to play. I just wanted to make music. I didn't want to have to go through all the rigors of practice, which is why I would have been a crappy music major. I mean, and I always thought that if I was a music major in college that it would have sucked all the fun out of music for me anyway. But I was one of these people that I just wanted to do what I loved. Oh, I think my little cardinal is outside. I hear him chirping outside the window. I named him Louie, and I think he's out front tonight. Yeah, that's him. He's my favorite. But anyway, I digress. So, I've always been one of those people that I've taken a very, very laissez-faire kind of attitude about pretty much everything in my life. I mean, what was it that Douglas Adams said about deadlines? He loved the sounds deadlines made as they went whizzing past. I mean, I figure, why stress myself with deadlines? Why put pressure to it? Which is a reason why it's a good thing I'm not a published author or trying to make my living as a writer, because, yeah, I'd be like J.D. Salinger. I'd just be like the one-hit wonder, and die penniless and starving somewhere because I never met a deadline. But, I mean, even with things like this wedding cross-stitch, I have to be in the right mood. I have to be in the right mood no matter what project I'm working on. Even with my writing. I mean, if I'm going to sit down and do a blog post or something, I can't just sit down and do it because I know you plan to get this done by this date and it's coming up. So sadly, I'm not one who's very, very good with deadlines when it comes to my cross-stitching. Now, I mean, with my nieces I was, because I started it with enough time, and I knew I wanted to have it for her before she went to her competition. But like with this cross-stitch, I mean, not having it done before the wedding wasn't a deal breaker, because I know they'll love it whenever they get it. So I'm pretty laissez-faire, and I have to admit, I admire anyone who can bullet journal. I admire anyone who sets up a strict timeline for anything in their life. I admire people who keep planners, Filofaxes, anything like that, because I'm so not that person. And maybe if I had children, I would be, but just being me and my husband, I'm just so laissez-faire about things. I need to probably get a little more organized for my own sanity, but that's just me. So this will get done in the next couple of months, because it's not a hard cross stitch. I mean, technically I could have done the whole thing in the one color, but I wanted to do it to fit the color scheme of their wedding. And I think it's really going to be one of those impressionistic type things where the further back you get from it, the more it looks like what it's supposed to. Because I think if you look at the groom's face up close, it doesn't really look like a head, but if you step back from it, it really looks like a groom in a tuxedo. So that one will get done, and hopefully by the time I make my next video, I will have made some progress on that. Hopefully close to being finished, but I doubt it, because that's 2 weeks from now. That's 2 weeks from Friday. So, and then the last project, which is another one that I have a deadline for, sort of a deadline, is Nutty Parade. Now, I know you've seen several Flosstubers working on this, and it actually has motivated me, seeing other people doing this, to get off my keister and work on it. But I need to fix a stitch on the right-hand side, but let me just stand up and figure out how to, there we go. That's the progress I've made. I've got to fix a stitch on the pole on the left-hand side. Now you'll notice that my pole there doesn't look a thing like the other stitchers. It's because I got the colors all back asswards, pardon my French, but I screwed them up one night when I was stitching late. And I figured, you know what, that looks fine the way it is. I'm not going to tear it out. So I just got to make sure I do the pole on the other side in the same colors because I screwed that up. Now this was the one that I had mentioned I had a false start on last summer. And it's funny, I have written on my pattern, started 7/24/15, restarted 8/29/15. And I think what happened, if I remember correctly, was I started stitching with this dude in the center, the blue dude with the gold hat. Or no, actually, I misspoke. I started stitching with this guy, the blue guy, like the leader here in the center. But the problem was, his part of the pattern straddled 2 pages. And normally that's not a problem for me, but last summer I remember I had a hellacious sinus infection. And I was actually sick several times during the fall with the same sinus infection, and it just was a pain. And I think what I did was I started stitching him, and somehow the hat didn't quite line up. I'm not sure where it got off, but it was off just enough that there was no way I could fix it, especially stitching it on linen. This is 32 count crystal Ariel from Picture This Plus. I believe it's Cashel. That seems to be the one that I stitch on 32 count all the time. So yeah, I got frustrated with it and I stopped it and started over. I happened to have another piece of this fabric and I was just like, okay, I'm not going to ever be able to rip out all this. So what I did when I restarted it was I started it with the guy on the far end and then just worked my way across, and that's been working so much easier. So I've got the 4th nutcracker started, his legs, and it's teensy scotch of his boots. So we'll see how much of that I get done. Like I said, I'm thinking of working comp time so I can just take my entire birthday weekend off. Football camp starts on the 7th, so I don't know how much time I'm actually going to have with Bill on the 5th. Hopefully I'll have some decent time with him on the 6th because that's his birthday. And I hope to, be able to have time with him. But we just decided we're going low-key for our birthdays this year. I know what he's getting me. He knows what I'm getting him. And, because with camp starting up, it just doesn't pay to be trying to do anything elaborate right at our birthdays, but at least we get our birthdays together. Some years in times past, if we had a game on August 31st, camp would have started before our birthdays. So hopefully if I can take that day off, I can get a lot of stitching done. I do plan to work on the Rosewood Manor Old Glory, which I would show you, but I don't have that much done on it right now. It's not worth pulling out to show you. But since it's the Olympic opening ceremonies, I figured, why not? It's patriotic. So that's where my work stands right now. I think that if I stick with my every 2-week schedule, I should be fine on videos. I do want to thank my subscribers again, if I didn't thank you already. I really appreciate the support. It takes a lot to put yourself out here on a video, even if it's only a few people who are going to see it. And I just figured, why not? Why not try it? And I really appreciate the support. I appreciate the support of my cross stitch because my husband's really the only one, my husband and my mother are the only ones who really know enough about it to be my support system. My husband knows well enough now when he says, honey, just put the needle down, if I'm sick or if he hears me swearing over something, or if I'm tired, if it's late, if it's after, say, 10 o'clock at night, he's good about saying, honey, we'll be here tomorrow. Why don't you just call it a night, take a break? And he's always supportive of me when I want to buy stash, things like that. But it really means a lot to me to have the Flosstube community and have the support of the Flosstube community, because it's a misunderstood art form, I think, by some people. And thank you for being my YouTube family. Thank you for your support. I hope you can see everything at least halfway decent on this computer in this weird light situation. I'm still trying to figure out how to do the best lighting in here since it's not that great anyway. But as always, if there's any questions you have or any suggestions how to make my videos better, please leave them in the comments. And it looks like I'm actually going to come in under 30 minutes now, so that turned out to be briefer than I thought it would be. So until the 5th, I wish you happy stitching and good life. See you soon.